We offer you deep historical information from history on YouTube channel. Subscribe. Now don't forget to turn on notifications.
The Napoleonic Wars were a series of conflicts that marked an important period in European and world history in the early 19th century. These wars were military campaigns aimed at the expansion and hegemony of France in Europe, led by Napoleon Bonaparte, who had risen in the wake of the French Revolution. This period lasted from 1799 to 1815 and saw major military conflicts involving many countries. The origins of the Napoleonic Wars can be traced back to the beginning of the French Revolution. This revolution, which broke out in 1789, overthrew the feudal order in France, ended the monarchy, and led to the establishment of the Republic. The revolution was based on the principles of liberty, equality, and fraternity. However, the domestic and foreign policies of this revolutionary period led other European powers to take advantage of France's instability and intervene. After the French Revolution, Napoleon Bonaparte rose to become the ruler of France. Under Napoleon's leadership, France launched extensive military campaigns to dominate Europe from 1799 to 1815. Napoleon's military genius and innovative strategies led the French army to a series of victories. These victories included important battles such as Marengo, 1800, Austerlitz, 1805, and Jena-Auerstedt, 1806. However, Napoleon's expansionist policies and quest for hegemony worried the other great powers of Europe, such as Britain, Russia, Austria, and Prussia. These states formed coalitions to balance Napoleon's power and stop his expansion. The Napoleonic Wars were characterized by increasing conflict between these coalitions and the French Empire. There were many major conflicts throughout the wars. Some of Napoleon's campaigns, such as the Russian campaign, 1812, ended in disaster and led to the collapse of the French Empire. Other conflicts, such as the Battle of Leipzig in 1813 and 1814, continued to shake Napoleon's power. Finally, the first phase of the Napoleonic Wars ended with the storming of Paris, which led to Napoleon's dethronement in 1814. However, the final phase of the Napoleonic Wars began when Napoleon escaped from the Isle of Elba, returned and suffered his final defeat at the Battle of Waterloo in 1815. This battle led to Napoleon's final defeat and exile. The Napoleonic Wars led to the redrawing of the political map of Europe and the establishment of a policy of balance at the Congress of Vienna, 1814-1815. As a result of the Napoleonic Wars, the political balance of Europe and international relations were greatly affected. The nationalist and democratic movements that emerged after the French Revolution also gained strength during this period. The Napoleonic Wars are regarded as a major turning point in the history of modern Europe and are still a subject of interest to historians and strategists today. These wars shaped political, economic, and social change in Europe, as well as the development of military tactics and strategy. The Napoleonic Wars had a profound impact not only on Europe, but also on world history. Here are some of the major outcomes of the Napoleonic Wars. The political balance of Europe changed. The Napoleonic Wars drastically altered the political map of Europe. With the fall of the French Empire, the balance of power in Europe was redrawn. The coalition wars had a global impact. The coalitions formed to confront Napoleon's France transcended the borders of Europe and had a global impact. The impact on Britain's overseas colonies and trade was particularly great. International relations were rebalanced. With the end of the Napoleonic Wars came the Congress of Vienna. This Congress aimed to redefine the political order of Europe and create a balanced system. This led to a redefinition of international relations and diplomatic norms. Nationalism and democratic movements gained strength after the Napoleonic Wars. A period of strengthening national identities and nationalism began. In addition, the spread of democratic principles and human rights brought about by the French Revolution accelerated. Changes in war technology and strategy. The Napoleonic Wars also led to significant changes in war technology and strategy. In particular, there were developments in artillery, tactics, and logistics. These wars contributed to the development of modern warfare. Cultural impact. The Napoleonic Wars also had an impact on European culture and art. The rise of Romanticism coincided with this period, and the destructiveness of the wars was reflected in art and literature. Cultural impact. The Napoleonic Wars also had an impact on European culture and art. The rise of Romanticism coincided with this period, and the destructiveness of the wars was reflected in art and literature. Impact on the colonies. The wars also had an impact on Europe's colonial empires. In particular, Britain's control over its overseas empire was consolidated, and rivalry between other European powers increased. The outcomes of the Napoleonic Wars had complex and long-term consequences that profoundly affected European and world history. They played a major role in shaping international relations and the modern world order, redrawing national borders. With the end of the Napoleonic Wars, national borders in Europe were redrawn. At the Congress of Vienna, the borders and political structures of many European countries were redrawn. This process resulted in some nations gaining independence or losing territory. Economic change in Europe. The European economy was badly affected by the wars. Invasions, plundering, and disruption of trade caused many countries to suffer economically. However, industrialization and technological development also accelerated during the wars. This accelerated the industrial transformation of Europe in the period that followed. Changes in European domestic politics. The Napoleonic Wars also led to significant changes in Europe's internal politics. Monarchical structures were shaken, and liberal reforms took place in many countries. Under the influence of the French Revolution in particular, many European countries made progress in terms of public participation and rights. Napoleon's legal and institutional legacy. After the Napoleonic Wars, Napoleon's legal and institutional legacy was influential in many European countries. In particular, Napoleon's laws and reforms became the ground rules that still apply in many countries. This played an important role in the development of modern legal systems, development of diplomatic norms in international relations. The Napoleonic Wars are regarded as an important turning point in the development of modern international relations. During this period, significant progress was made on issues such as diplomatic norms, the limits of war, and the conclusion of international agreements. This helped to make international relations more predictable and orderly. The results of the Napoleonic Wars not only affected Europe, but also led to many important changes that shaped world history. These wars represent a critical period with many events and developments that laid the foundations of the modern world order. Today, the impact and consequences of the Napoleonic Wars remain an important topic of research and evaluation for historians, strategists, and policymakers. Maintaining the European balance of power. With the end of the Napoleonic Wars, the search for a long-term balance of power among European states began. This period saw attempts to establish a policy of balance between the great powers and various diplomatic efforts to ensure stability in the international system. Social impact of the war. The Napoleonic Wars had a profound and lasting impact on European societies. The suffering and losses of the wars deeply affected the social fabric of societies. At the same time, the roles of women and civilians were reshaped during the wars, and many social changes took place during this period. post-war reconstruction efforts. After the Napoleonic Wars, many countries in Europe went through a process of post-war reconstruction. Various reforms and projects were initiated to rebuild economically, politically, and socially damaged regions. This process was an important part of Europe's modernization and development process. Progress in international cooperation and diplomacy. The Napoleonic Wars also led to significant advances in international cooperation and diplomacy. In particular, the Congress of Vienna established various diplomatic mechanisms and institutions to protect common interests and maintain peace among European states. This contributed to a more institutionalized structure of international relations. Development of new military doctrines. The Napoleonic Wars played an important role in the development of military doctrines and strategies. The tactics, weapons, and logistical systems used during the wars were crucial to the development of military thought and practice in subsequent periods. It was a period in which the foundations of modern warfare were laid. The influence of revolutionary and counter-revolutionary movements in Europe. The Napoleonic Wars increased the influence of revolutionary and counter-revolutionary movements in Europe. During or after the wars, revolutionary or counter-revolutionary movements emerged in many European countries under the influence of the French Revolution. These movements profoundly influenced European political history and led to the change of political regimes in many countries. The results of the Napoleonic Wars point to many complex and long-term consequences that have profoundly affected European and world history. More than just military conflicts, these wars were part of a period that shaped the political, economic, social, and cultural development of Europe. The impact and consequences of the Napoleonic Wars are still an important topic for historians, strategists, and policymakers today.
We offer you deep historical information from history on YouTube channel. Subscribe. Now don't forget to turn on notifications.